Welcome to Grit, Grace, and Growth, the podcast where we dive deep into the journeys of remarkable individuals who embody resilience, determination, and the mindset to continue growing. Today, we have a special guest, Dawn Scott. With over 17 years of experience as a CPA, Dawn has dedicated her career to helping entrepreneurs streamline their business and master their accounting and tax needs. Her passion lies in creating a safe space for you to learn, grow, and build the business of your dreams, knowing you have a trusted partner in every step of the way. Beyond her professional expertise, Dawn has founded a community of like minded women, providing the supports needed for those hard money talks and celebrating every success along the way. So join us today as we explore Dawn's journey and the invaluable insights she brings as a CPA. Let's jump in. All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Grit, Grace, and Growth. Today, I have an exciting guest, Dawn Scott, and I want to thank you so much for joining me today on today's episode.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here.
All right. Today's topic of conversation is one that I feel that many times we try to avoid as whether individuals or business owners, but it's really one that's so valuable and it really cannot be overlooked. It probably has more of an impact on our business than we even really give it credit for having. And that is the value of having a CPA. And I'm going to hand it over to Dawn just to give you a high level, before we go into any specific questions, but a high level idea of what a CPA is in case, maybe you're thinking of a financial advisor or, an attorney or whatever it may be. But just to clarify, what is a CPA?
Absolutely. So, a CPA is an important part of all businesses. So, what we are by definition is a certified public accountant, which by licensing standards means that we have a very specific set of higher education. We have gone through a very rigorous set of testings and we're held to a higher ethical standard, as well as we are required to do an enormous amount of education every year to maintain our license. So, what we do for businesses is everything from tax, compliance, accounting, bookkeeping, and auditing if you're kind of in that space. I have a strict no auditing policy, but really for the public, it is a set of letters behind your name that states that you've gone through this rigorous amount of education and further education to be of service to the community. So when we talk about taxes, there's also an additional set of letters that you may see out and about, which is an EA, which is an enrolled agent. They're licensed through the IRS directly. So they have a different set of standards and education and testing, but they are specifically for tax compliance.
Okay. See, I'm learning something new as well because I had no idea about that. I definitely know the value of a CPA. Thank you so much for sharing that. And would you be able to elaborate a little bit more so we know what a CPA is now or have a better understanding? What would be some of the value or the exact benefits of having a CPA for our business?
Absolutely. So when we think about adding someone like this to our team, I think the things that we need to understand is there's the bookkeeping and accounting side where we keep track of the income, we keep track of the expenses, any sort of capital things that we're purchasing, any sort of liabilities like loans and those kind of things we're taking on. So we have the general accounting and bookkeeping. And then in addition to that, we have the tax compliance that we have to do. So it's kind of two parts that we need to address and identify. And when we're looking at building out our team, I think it's pretty common to hear like, hey, I'm looking for a bookkeeper. And a bookkeeper is a pretty vague, a lot of people can say they're a bookkeeper. There's really no regulation or anything kind of in maintaining an integrity around what that means. But those people are really your day-to-day nitty-gritty. And that's what I see a lot of people try to do themselves because in theory, I have QuickBooks Online. It's so easy. It's great. All those things. And it is a phenomenal tool and it's a great tool until things go sideways. And if you don't know what you're looking for, that sideways can be very expensive. So we have the bookkeeper accounting role that kind of goes with just keeping track of your things. And then we have the tax compliance, which takes that information and then reports it to whatever agencies. So the IRS, your state licensing, but your state tax board, if you have sales tax, those kind of things. So they work in tandem together to make sure that your business is compliant so that you can maintain business and go
Hmm.
forward in a compliant basis, because none of us like any sort of tax letters from really
Yeah, of
anybody.
course. Yes, exactly, exactly. My husband and I always joke about that. We're like, is it taxes? Is there anything worse than taxes? I don't know. I don't want to pay taxes,
The
but
DMV,
it's like,
that's what I've decided. The DMV
yeah,
and any tax authority.
exactly. Those are not the letters you want to see coming in your mailbox. I'm
No,
like, what do you
definitely
want?
not. Exactly. Yeah. It's pretty brutal. So
Well,
for me, sorry, keep going.
uh-huh.
Sorry,
No,
sorry.
no, go ahead.
So for me, what I see is when I talk to people, especially in the newer stages of their business, there's two things that people usually outsource first when the money is available. So we outsource our enroll or our assistant role, right? We have a virtual assistant, we have an in-person assistant. That's a person that usually gets outsourced first. And then the second one is typically that bookkeeping function, because it takes so much time, especially if you're uncomfortable with it, you don't know what you're doing, or you put it off. Even worse, you put it off
Hmm.
for a full year at a time. Those are the first things that we usually see people seek help for, because nobody really loves it.
Yeah, and I would agree on that. Even just like firsthand, my own experience is that the first the first thing that we actually hired out for or invested in was a CPA, because it's something like myself or like many people try to do ourselves the first couple of years, and as a business started to grow, it just became that much more difficult to know what we're doing. I'm not trained in this, and using the tools that are online. And as you started growing, and I just started feeling too that we could probably be saving more in tax write-offs or just different things that I don't even know what to write off exactly. So that was definitely one of our first investments, was a CPA, and then thereafter was a salesperson. And then I still don't have a full-time assistant yet, still to this day. And I would keep telling my husband, I'm like, yeah, I think I'm really getting there. I think I need an assistant. But yeah, so like the value of having a CPA is invaluable. Like really, I can't express it enough, and the headache that it takes away from you personally trying to figure it out, and
Yeah.
overall.
I think when I speak with a client, a new client or an existing client, I always tell them my services are tax deductible. So, like,
Hmm.
you're welcome. But
Yes.
also, there is usually a really good likelihood that I will save you my fees in taxes when I do them for you, because I
Hmm.
know, obviously, like any CPA is keeping up on the tax legislation. We know what's deductible, we know it's not deductible, we know what red flags are out. We know
Hmm.
things like if you do this, there's a higher likelihood than not that you're going to get a letter. Or if you don't do this, you're missing out on X, Y, or Z. And so it's
Hmm.
really, for my clients, it's the peace of mind knowing that if they do get something in the mail, they get to send it to me and I get to deal
Hmm.
with it. Because that's another thing that's really important. Just because you get a letter from the IRS saying you owe money doesn't necessarily mean they're right. So
Hmm.
don't just
Okay.
always pay that, because they may not be right. 50-50, it's debatable that it's correct. So keep that in your little
Okay.
pocket.
That is really good to know, even for myself. I know a few
Mhm.
years ago I did get a letter, and now going, and I was just like, oh my goodness, I guess. And I called them, and they pretty much told me, no, this is what you know owed once we audited and looked through it. And I was like, all right, well, this is a bummer. This sucks,
Mhm.
and I paid it. And I mean, maybe I did owe it, maybe, but who knows? I didn't even know to really reach out and to
Yeah.
find out whether that was valid or whether I could have
Mhm.
gotten out of that or not.
Yeah, and
So.
especially with all the backup that they've had the last couple of years, it is a little chaotic and things are taking a lot more time. And so if you're not persistent and you're not, thorough, and you're not kind of bully them a scotch, if you're right, you got to bully them a little sometimes. And
Mhm.
just knowing that you're right is, or wrong. Sometimes they're just
Yeah.
wrong, and so, but having the knowledge to know, yes, pay this, or no,
Okay.
don't pay that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely, well, now I guess I'll know for the future now that I actually use the CPA instead of doing it
Mhm.
myself. That was a few years ago. Overall, I wanted to ask you, so with your services, I have plenty of other questions for you, but with your services, do you primarily focus on certain industries, or, you're just open to any entrepreneur business?
So that's a really good question. So for me personally, I find that I specialize in female founders,
Mhm.
typically speaking in the service type business. And that kind of weeds me down to what I like to call helpers. So if you're passionate about what you do, typically that means you're bettering the world in some form or
Mm-hmm.
fashion. And so I like to joke that I'm not curing cancer by any means of anything that I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing, but I can help my clients by giving them peace of mind and all these things. And in return, I get to spend my time with these women who are so passionate about what they're doing, and it is completely
Mm-hmm.
contagious. And so I get
Yes.
from them this just like energy that is beautiful. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how I like to spend my day. So I really gravitate towards that female founder service base. But there are many people who specialize in e-commerce or niche you
Mm-hmm.
find yourself in. You can usually find somebody who specializes in that industry.
And would you say that that is a really important thing to consider when you're looking for a CPA, is making sure that you have one that aligns with, if you, like for us, like we are in real estate. So we have a nonprofit, we have a for-profit business, and then we have our real estate investment portfolio. So would you say that it's important that those each go to a CPA that specializes in that particular industry? Or is it, can I send everything to the same CPA?
So for you, you are kind of spanning all the high points. So you're probably a very specific case. Most people don't
Mm-hmm.
come with those. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't do any not for profit. So
Okay.
I wouldn't be a good fit for you because I don't touch fees. I don't,
Mm-hmm.
that is not my zone of genius. Real estate is a very particular industry. So I would say
Mm-hmm.
you want to find someone, especially if you're in REITs and all those kind of things, you want to find someone specific in there. E-commerce is pretty specific. It doesn't really matter what you're doing inside of e-commerce, but you're dealing with a lot of inventory and you're dealing with a lot
Mm-hmm.
of potential state nexus issues, which means are you selling to these different states, and every state has a threshold. So that gets
Mm-hmm.
very particular. So
Okay.
I don't know that it necessarily has to be super specific. Like I sell shoes. I don't need
Mm-hmm.
a CPA who specializes in selling shoes,
Shoes. Yeah.
but a retail is
Mm-hmm.
probably important from an inventory perspective. I think the thing that's most important with a CPA, and we were joking about this before we started, is it's very important to me that my clients feel very comfortable with me. So I
Mm-hmm.
come with a set of skills. I obviously have the capacity to pass this test, and I have all this education and all these things. So it's known that I come with a basis of education. But for me, having a comfort level with my clients, I want them to feel like they can call me. I want them to feel like they can speak openly with me, because in my mind, if you're scared of me, I'm no good to you because you're not going to call me. I'm not going to know what's going on. And so
Mm-hmm.
I always recommend that you find someone you're comfortable with,
Mm-hmm.
someone that you think you can talk to openly, because if you're not honest with them, they're not going to really be any good to you. So I would start with the
Mm-hmm.
relationship, and then I would make sure that they specialize and or are capable of the
Mm-hmm.
type of work you do.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point to make as well. And just like 2 points to kind of still piggyback off of your earlier point about finding a CPA that specializes in the industry that you're in, at least to a certain point, maybe not as granular as selling shoes, but even for ourselves, and, maybe everyone's not in my shoes of spanning yourself across different verticals there, but we use one CPA for our real estate. And that's actually even just newer within the past year, because that was recommended to us a few times to really take into consideration finding a CPA that specializes in real estate. We did last year's taxes, so this will be going into year two, and it really did make a difference. And I didn't know. So like, not having the knowledge prior to, I didn't really know that it would make a difference. I already thought we were making enough of a difference by using a CPA versus trying to do things ourselves. And then also for the nonprofit, we have another CPA that does that as well. So that's a really good point to make as well. And then also, again, on your point of working with somebody who you connect with. And I say this, I was just having this conversation yesterday with my husband about, it makes such a significant difference when you naturally connect with somebody and you feel comfortable with them, and your conversations don't feel forced. You can have, you just feel comfortable. You get so much more done, and you're a lot more productive because you just sync with one another. You feel comfortable with one another versus it's just transactional type of thing. It makes that much of a difference. So I think that's a really great point to make as well that, maybe we don't always necessarily think of when we're going out for a particular service or anything
Well,
that we do in our businesses.
and especially CPAs, right? I don't think anyone listening has ever woken up and been like, oh my God, I'm so pumped I get to talk to my CPA today. It's, money's emotional. It's like whenever I have to talk to a lawyer, I hate talking to lawyers. My lawyer is the nicest person I've ever met, but I
Mm-hmm.
still am like, I never know how much it's going to cost or what the outcome is going to be. And so it gives me a lot of anxiety. And so having someone who can lower that anxiety for you is super
Mm-hmm.
important.
Yeah, that's true. I agree. And so overall, I know again, we've gotten a lot of information on CPAs. What would you feel, excuse me, as I feel again, this is a conversation I have with other business owners and founders, is that there are a lot of misconceptions around a CPA overall. What do you feel are some of the common misconceptions that people have about a CPA that are just that you can totally debunk because they're not valid?
Well, so I think that a lot of people, when they're just starting out, especially, think, I don't actually need this person because I can do the bookkeeping myself. I can hop onto
Mhm.
TurboTax. I can file this thing by myself. And to an extent, you can probably do all those things. And so I think a big misconception is that we're not necessary. Um,
Mhm.
and like we've talked about before, while you can do all those things, it's very likely costing you more money than it would cost to
Yeah.
engage someone like us. Um, and I think another misconception is when we close our eyes and we think about what a CPA looks like to us. I think when we close our eyes and we all do that, we get the same person, right?
Mhm.
I think a misconception is that all CPAs are like that. And I am happy to report the next generation is a little hipper. It's still not a sexy industry, but we're trying. We're trying. There's a lot of AI out, which is
Mhm.
phenomenal. I think it's really cool. But when you trust your entire world, to me, financial health is like your entire world. When you
Yes.
trust that to AI or to some kind of generated accounting software, you're going to get what you pay for.
Mhm.
I've seen a lot of messy things, and the response is always, well, it was only $200 a month. And it's like, yeah, because it's not right.
Yeah.
So a misconception is I can do it, I can do it, I can do it.
Mhm.
And then when you realize you can't do it, it's very expensive to fix.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's just better to start out, even if it's just establishing a relationship, asking a couple questions. I have some people that I talk to a couple of times a year. They engage me for an hour or two of my services, and they bring a list and we run through it and we just
Mhm.
knock out like, these are all my questions. And we just like,
Mhm.
because they just need some guidance. And
Yes.
then they're like, okay, because
Mhm.
we all have friends we go to and we're out and about and we're like, oh, my CPA told me to do this. And then in the back of your mind, you're like, well, I'm not doing that. Should
Mhm.
I be doing that? Well, why are
Yeah.
you getting money back? Why am I not getting money back? And
Mhm.
there's always an answer. But if you don't know the ins and outs, you can't usually come up with that answer. And the same is true for Googling, what can I deduct?
Yes.
Or TikTok accounting. I love TikTok accounting. It is a very guilty pleasure of mine because some of it is so bad. But if that's all
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
don't listen to
Well,
TikTok accounting.
oh my goodness. That's a great point. I know. I just try to stay off of or not try to stay off, but yeah, I guess I do try to stay off TikTok is a whole other point, but just I find myself consuming way too much time because then I start watching all these videos and I'm like, okay, I need to get to work. So overall, what would you say? So I know you're saying like, okay, use a CPA, engage and hire a CPA because of course you possibly are spending or it's being much more costly in the long run than just making that investment in a CPA. But would you say that there's a right time to hire a CPA? So like I'm starting a business, I should hire a CPA like now type of thing, or maybe wait a year or two, a couple months. When should I actually go out, or when should someone go out and actually make that investment? We know that it should be one of the first investments, but when?
So that's a really good question. So there's a couple things to consider. So when we're first starting out, or when we've been in business for a while, we have a particular type of entity that we have chosen. I always love it when people talk to me before they choose their entity because each
Oh.
different type of entity has a specific set of guidelines as to what we need to be doing. Some you're required to have a payroll, some you're not
Mhm.
allowed to have a payroll. I always, first and foremost, if you take nothing other than this from my entire talk today, set up a personal bank account and set up a business bank account and keep them completely separate. Do all your business in your business, do all your personal in your personal. That alone will save you a headache and a half. So if nothing else, take that from today. I would say, so entity structure, because then we can also talk about the importance of quarterly tax payments, because when you're an entrepreneur, you're not paying anything on your wages as far as tax payments, right? And so just understanding what that even means, where you go to pay them even, right? Like who knows where to go to pay them? I know, I can share that with you, right? Kind of thing. So at least you get started on the right path. So I would start there. And if that's the only thing you do with them in the beginning, that makes me happy. And then as far as engaging someone to do your bookkeeping and your taxes, what I always say is, if you doing your taxes and you doing your bookkeeping is taking you away from doing the actual task that makes you money, you need to weigh how long you're spending on that, because you're not getting any money for doing that. Versus if you were to be spending that time doing your actual business, what does that payoff look like, right? So like for me, if I spend 3 hours doing something that I can't bill for, that's 3 hours of billable time that I'm spending on that. So if I can hire someone for less than that 3 hours of my billable rate, like, and I don't have to do it, heck yeah, like sign me up. So that analysis is important. And it's hard in the beginning when we're bootstrapped, or, there's not a lot of money coming in, and it comes down to doing your own accounting and paying your rent. Like obviously we pay our rent, but as soon as that money frees up and or that analysis pays off, then I would say that's something you should outsource.
Yeah, that's a great. I love the point that you made from the beginning as well, before you choose your entity. I never even thought of that. So definitely a lesson learned for me. I went out initially and started certain entities. I know when we hired the real estate a CPA, she helped us with some other formations and different things on how to set up and move things around. So that was so beneficial as well. So I think, again, yes, reach out to your CPA, hire a CPA and get that information, because it really does, I know everyone's situation and circumstance is completely different, but even just knowing from my own personal experience, like it was something that I was holding on to for too long, just too long because of the investment in it. But it really does pay off tenfold, because, whatever it costs you, you're most likely saving at least that, but probably even more.
And I think in addition to the financial, there's a financial commitment, but for me, I always joke, I talk about money and I talk about feelings more than I talk about money. What I find is there is a release of worry, concern, and just like a mental capacity that has been so focused on I've got to do this, I've got to do this. It's on my to-do list. It's on the top of my to-do list. It's been there forever. And when you can give that away, the amount of your brain that you're just freeing up to do other things, that also is very impactful in your business, because you're no longer worrying about this. You're worrying about actually driving things in your business.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'm just like reminiscing back to like the weight I got off my shoulders when I handed that over. That is so true. But I know, like, before we jumped on our call, you were sharing some pretty exciting news with me, and I wanted to give you the floor again, or give you the mic, if you say, to share with followers or people listening, because that's definitely something really neat.
Thank you. So you've probably heard me talk about feelings a couple times during this. I am one of those CPAs who I care about your feelings as much as I care about your financial health, because to me, those things go together. I joke that I'm a therapist in addition to being a CPA, because money is so emotional and it really impacts every part of your life. And so I've been in business for 10 years on my own, and I can tell you the one main vein that I see in a lot of female entrepreneurs is I have nobody to go celebrate my victories with, because I don't want to be seen as boastful. I don't want the community around me to ever think I'm anything other than successful. So I don't have anyone to share my like, oh gosh, moments with. And we're all, as we trek through life, going through these different things, right? Like we're having babies, we're getting married, whatever order, it doesn't matter. Our parents are aging, whatever. There's no place for us to go talk about it. So we've created a community where we can all come together. You can come in and say, hey, I like killed this thing at work. It was amazing. And we're all like, yay, right? Or,
Yes.
hey, shit hit the fan today. I just need to tell somebody. And
Mhm.
maybe it's either like, man, sorry, totally standing with you, or hey, I've gone through that too. These are the things that
Mhm.
helped me. But really building this beautiful community of supportive people. So the Empowered CPA is where my podcast is, but also where this
Mhm.
community lives. So we're super excited about it. It's going to have, masterminds, things like that. And I'm finishing up a financial therapy designation. So more
Mhm.
education, more
Yes.
letters, more all the things, but really using that information to build a safe place for female entrepreneurs.
Yeah,
It's
I
great.
love that. And creating something like that is not something I even personally thought of, but like I think that is so great because, we all have those moments and of course, like, we want to celebrate our wins, great and small, but then also, not every day is, you know, butterflies and whatever. It's not always perfect every day. And sometimes we just need a vent or have somebody to share that with that
Mhm.
can even understand us on the sense of being an entrepreneur as well and the challenges that we face sometimes, even if they're not the same challenges, but just having
I
that
agree.
area that audience to speak to. So that's great. Thank you so
Yeah.
much again for joining me on today's episode. But before we wrap up, I also want to ask you, followers, where can they find you? And I'll
So,
also include this information in the information below. But also, I just want you to share quickly where they can find you.
absolutely. So, Gradium Consulting is my private accounting practice. So, again, we
Mhm.
specialize in female founders, everything from pre revenue all the way through you're tired and we're selling this thing off. So, we can help you
Mhm.
all along the way. And then the Empowered CPA is where you can find my podcast. You
Mhm.
can find our community. There are digital courses on there. So, say you were listening, you're like, hey, what does she mean by quarterly tax payments? We courses and videos and kind of how to's where you can go
Mhm.
get that information. It's better than Google, very reliable. So, those are the two main places you can find me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Everybody go out and check her out. Definitely her links and information will be below, so it's easy to find her. And again, Dawn, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of Grit, Grace, and all right, guys, that's a wrap for today's episode of Grit, Grace, and Growth. I want to extend a sincere thank you to Dawn Scott for joining us and sharing her wealth of knowledge and experience. Dawn's dedication to helping entrepreneurs streamline their business and master their accounting needs, really so invaluable. Her commitment to creating a supportive community for women and fostering a safe space for growth is something we can all learn and lean on. I hope Dawn's insights have given you valuable tools and motivation to take control of your business finances and to continue your journey towards success. Remember that with the right support and resources, you can achieve your dreams. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody who you think can benefit from Dawn's expertise. For more information, resources, and updates, take a look below where I've attached Dawn's contact information and also follow us on social media for more tips, advice, and just day-to-day life. Thank you for listening. And until next time, keep embracing the grit, the grace, and growth in your own life.